that I remember very clearly with my mom too. I was struggling to kind of make a decision on an apartment at the time to live in Long Beach, and I still had this itch to travel and get away and like keep on going. And I remember her, as far as the lifestyle in Europe and all that, it was very enticing to me.
Yes.
And maybe going there, or going to live in Israel, it was really appealing to me. Yeah, and exciting. And I remember her I call it to this day, and I remember writing about it, kind of a verbal slap. Like my mom would like verbally slap me of like, you can create the kind of life that you want to create right here, right? It's up to you to create the kind of life that you want to create. Yes. And I remember that really resonated with me. And that was kind of when I had made the turn of like, okay, yeah, I guess I do need a kind of anchor at some point, because I also didn't want to be a wanderer. Yes. Right? So that
Welcome to the studio, Ahdee. We've known each other for quite a while. Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
So, Ahdee, you had started a company a fair while ago with pet products.
Yes.
Where did it come from? Why did you start this?
Well, it really started a long time before that. My family was in the pet space. My dad had run a pet supply distribution center.
What was he selling on pet supplies?
Everything but dog food and cat litter, pretty much. So everything that you needed in a pet shop. My dad had a cash and carry type of location that he was involved in, so he was a partner in this business. And my brother worked there when he was a kid, and my mom worked there. I used to work there when I was a kid, in junior high and high school, just during the summers. So that's kind of how I initially got into the pet space. So my dad was involved in that for many years.
So when you were actually seeing that growing up, like you saw like the business of pet, did you think that this is my future?
No, I wouldn't say that pet. I would say that pet was my future, but I would say from a very early age, entrepreneurship was part of my future. I remember very clearly sitting at the dinner table one night with my parents talking about business and the dealings of the day, if you will. And I remember that just the idea of creating something out of nothing really inspired me at a really young age. I'd say probably between 12 to 14-ish, that I remember going, one day I'm going to create something. What it was, I had no idea. What industry it was, no clue. But that sense of entrepreneurship was really early on, and I even have memories even before that of my brother and I finding little like wires of twine probably before I was 10, and like, oh, we can turn this into something, and let's try selling them, and trying to put something together. I don't think we sold anything, but it was that spark of an idea of like, hey, we can take this piece of wire and add value to it, if you will.
Did your parents try to guide you into doing something else, or go to school and I don't know, become a doctor or stuff like that? Did they say that you must do your education and stuff like that? Were they trying to push that on you?
They were definitely education focused, but I'd say even entrepreneurship was within kind of my family blood, if you will, in the sense that my great grandparents were butchers, right? And they come from Israel, so they were butchers in Israel and just had a little butcher shop. So entrepreneurship kind of came. My grandfather also owned a very small business in Israel that was involved in. So I think entrepreneurship was just kind of always around, and just that conversation or that idea that you can create something that you do yourself and not necessarily have to apply. So no, it was encouraged for me very much to go to school and get an education, but entrepreneurship and all that was kind of just kind of where it ends. Yeah, it was part of it was normal.
So okay, so you start working in your father's store, you're going to school and college, you're doing your thing. In school, what were you directing towards? Like, did you feel then still entrepreneurship, or were you trying to get an education because other people were doing the normal stuff?
No, it was still about getting an education and kind of going to school. I was in marketing and focusing on marketing, business administration, and getting the foundation for that.
So you were actually kind of putting it together, thinking you were going to entrepreneurship versus like other people saying, hey, I'm going to go to school and I want to be an interior designer.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, it was. I was going to go to school to learn, business administration and business and fundamentals of that. I didn't have the idea of going to work for New York's corporate, anything like that. That wasn't my ambition. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I mean, frankly, I had no clue. It was more of just like a one day at some point something. But business is such a broad concept, right?
Yes.
It's to say you're going to go into business, right? Does that mean you're going to become a corporate lawyer and work on Wall Street?
That's right.
Or are you going to a little barbershop on the corner, right? That those are all business opportunities. Yeah. So I didn't really know where within that spectrum I wanted to be yet, but I knew that business and the idea of creating something out of nothing was inspiring to me.
Okay, so you finish off your college, and now you say it's time to figure out, get a job. So do you still work in your father's place, or are you trying to find a job? Are you trying to get experience in the world? Where are you going after this?
Yeah, so funny enough, as I had graduated, by that time I have an older brother, right? He's 6.5 years older than I am. And he was working for my dad as he was kind of growing up and through his teens and early 20s. And they kind of butted heads, right? Family businesses are challenging, right?
Yes.
So they butted heads. And so me, as I was growing up, my mom was like, no more family businesses. Family is a lot more important than business. So I kind of grew up with the idea of this business that my dad has is not really an opportunity for me. It's just, that's family.
Yeah.
And I need to figure out my own path. Yeah. So as I graduated from college, I was, I had an itch to go travel. Yeah. I had, again, no idea what I wanted to do. But I was into Spanish. I had started to speak some Spanish in high school and throughout, and had a real interest in that.
Were you born in the U.S.?
I was born here. Yes, I was born in here. My parents were from Israel.
Got it. Okay.
So I was kind of first generation. My brother and I were born and raised
because
here.
your name is unusual. Ahdee is a very unusual name.
Yes. Yes. So yes, my name's Ahdee, and that's people was like, what? A who? But yeah, and I kind of was raised, by my folks who were they had immigrated here after college and raised me speaking Hebrew and English. So we spoke Hebrew at home. And then English, obviously I learned throughout.
So you're getting a college, you're trying to find your first job. So what do? Are you just going to Target and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for a job"? What are you looking for?
Well, it depends. It is right after college.
Yeah. Where do you go? Where's your first job?
My first job was after college. I went and traveled.
Oh, so
I went and traveled. I backpacked across Europe for 2 months on my own, and just had my Let's Go book. And found hostels and backpacked and did the Eurail and traveled throughout Spain and Italy and France and
so you just decided. So you went off. You did your 2 months. Did you plan 2 months or did you say I'm just going and I'll come back when I come back?
I planned 2 months. Okay. I came back a little short of the 2 months and then I came back and then I got a job working for. This was during the .com boom. Oh. Okay. So I started working for one of my brother's friends' companies, and that was it was during the .com boom. Everyone was going to become a billionaire overnight.
Were you one of the potential billionaires at that
moment? Oh no, I was getting coffee and doing nothing of that sort. But I stayed there, and it was a good experience. I learned a lot there, but it wasn't for me. And I still had the travel bug. I really had the travel bug at this time.
What didn't you like about that corporate or the .com environment? What didn't you like about it?
I don't know if it was that I didn't like that. When I was stuck in an office and that kind of felt weird, I didn't like that very much. But it was more of just, I still had a travel bug. I was really I had such a great time traveling and meeting people and speaking Spanish. And it was really I had a blast. And I was really in this mindset of, you only live once.
Yes, that's right.
Type of thing. And yes, all my friends were kind of starting to get jobs and doing their thing. But for me, even while I was there, I was like, I wasn't happy at that job. So I decided to find something else. And in between there, I took a week and I went back to Barcelona.
But do you see other people doing this when you're doing this, or are you running against the grain? Like everybody else is saying, hey, I got to go and do this job. And you're saying, hey, I'm free spirit, I'm out.
I think I was a little against the grain. I guess so. You know, it was more traditional, if you will,
That's
to you know, finish college, get a job, hunker down, and start, you know, building your career. And that just didn't appeal to me. And I don't know if it is because of my parents, right? And it's more traditional within Israel is, you know, there you go to the military and then you go travel for a year or two. Right, and you just go figure your life out before you even start college.
So you were bringing Israel to America, is that what it was?
I think so. Maybe I had seen it. I had seen it kind of growing up, right? Yeah. So that was, I saw my cousins doing that, and I remember my parents, and that was kind of their story of kind of growing up and doing that. So I think it's an important thing, right? Of when you grow up within a household where those things are possibilities, right? They're spoken of, and then it feels like, wow, that it doesn't feel abnormal at the same time. Now I had to fight my parents a little bit on it because they were like, why don't you do this? But I was like, particularly when I decided to go live there. So when I decided to go live in Spain for a year. And teach English out of all things.
So you were actually teaching over there? Is that what it was? Or is that a part of the living on a budget type of style of traveling?
Well, I had met the first time I had traveled there, and then the second time I went back. During those two times, I was staying in hostels, right? And
that's fairly cheap, right?
It's very cheap, you know, and a very affordable type of living. And you meet people from all over the world, which was that was the most fun. And during that time, you meet people I met people that were teaching English, and that teaching English was a real thing. Like it's a real industry, if you will, of you know, people want to learn English. So there are teachers that are traveling all over the world and they are certified to teach English.
But are you teaching English because you knew Spanish then, or is it because you had a little bit of Spanish and you could kind of piece together the English?
It was more of yes. So when I decided to go live there, I didn't want to just go live there and just, what am I going to do? Right. And I want to be a bum. I want to be a bum. Right. So learning how to teach English and then teaching English gave me kind of an anchor.
Yes.
And a purpose to be there. And at the same time, given me the ability to learn Spanish, because now I'm working in a school that is also teaching other languages, and I'm working at the school so I can get the Spanish lessons for free. And then you're meeting people there that are from Spain, so you're building relationships.
Yeah. So was that giving you enough money though to survive over there? Like that was enough money coming in for you to make it, or you had savings?
I had savings. Okay. I had savings. Yeah. So I had savings while I was working. I started working when I was 16. So I started working at then, and I had savings. And my parents fortunately were able to help me out as well in certain instances. But very, very grateful. That for their help, of course.
So this was I think this was a big important part of your life then, right? Because that experience that you get from traveling is like when I came from England to America. That for me was night and day.
Yeah,
that was probably a big important learning curve in your life.
Absolutely. I think there's so many things that there's probably a lot. Most of the things I don't even know that I learned because of that experience, right? But they're certainly foundational in being able to, knowing that you could do that. I did it all on my own, and I remember arriving to Madrid the first time in the kind of the middle of the night with my little this was before the internet, right? So it makes me sound old, but this was before the internet and your smartphone. I really just had my Let's Go book, and I'm like, where am I staying? I'm some hostel. How do I get there? I don't know. But that I think that builds strength and confidence over. But I also went through some really challenging times while traveling of feeling alone and isolated, and everybody's far away, and here you are on your own in the middle of some train station, and so, but you learn that you can make it through that too.
So how did you get through that, like being homesick? Because I remember even myself, like I used to get homesick and I couldn't even look at pictures. Because oh my God, I can't look at pictures of them because it's going to upset me even more. Put the pictures away. How do you get through that?
You change your mindset. You try to change your environment. The same things you do here when you're on kind of a downward spiral for something.
So were you calling home, like going to a payphone box to call home? And
yeah. I was calling. Yeah, I had a calling card. I had a calling card that I would call my parents or my brother or whoever. Yeah.
So I've got 5 minutes left. Let me speak to so and so.
I would have to renew the calling card or put more, pesetas in. And that's exactly it. Yeah.
So how long are you there teaching?
So I was there for just about a year,
Okay.
and I had a great time, and I really wanted to stay there and try to stay and anchor myself and live there, but things eventually pulled me back here, and that's, after coming back, and I moved back home with my folks,
Yes.
And I had a great relationship
And
with my parents.
how old were you at that point?
I would say I was in my mid 20s.
Mid-20s. Okay.
Mid-20s.
So still fairly young.
Yeah, still fairly young. So I'm back home, still not sure what I want to do with my life. And
Do you start working for your dad again, or?
yeah, so
okay.
I kind of had an epiphany one night because I started looking for jobs, right? And I was applying for all kinds of jobs, like operations manager and a bunch of entry level types of positions, and I couldn't get anything.
And you just wanted anything. You just needed to make some money.
I needed to start my career, right? So this is going back to what you had said earlier. At this point, I'm 2 to 4 years after graduating, and other friends of mine are, had built a resume, and I've just bounced around. I had a job here for 6 months, another job for a year, and then I taught English for, and bounced, right? So I didn't have a resume, if you will. So
It was an experienced resume, right?
exactly. Yes.
How to survive in a jungle.
Yeah, but no real I did this, and
Yes.
So as I was applying for all these, I couldn't find anything. It was just nothing. And I'm at home, so I come from living at abroad and having living right off La Rambla in Barcelona to now I'm home, and while it's great with my parents, I'm home and have nothing to do.
Yes.
And one night I just had an epiphany of my dad had 2 warehouses. Okay, one was in Van Nuys, and another one was in Long Beach.
Yeah.
And he was always in the Van Nuys location, and the one in Long Beach was
Never there.
he was nobody over there.
Okay.
So even while I grew up with the idea of we're going to butt heads in this, I got the idea, I'll go live and work in the one in Long Beach.
So you mean actually physically live in the building?
No, I'll find an apartment
okay.
and I'll go live down there and I'll work there.
Yeah.
And that way we're not just working under each other on a day-to-day basis. So I don't know, however, I convinced my folks to give me the opportunity to do that. But I said, hey, if it works for 3 months, it works. And if it doesn't, no harm, no foul.
Did you give him a business plan to do this?
No, I remember sitting on the couch. I was sitting on the couch and I have this idea. Let's see if this would work, right?
And did they trust you when you were having that conversation, or did they say this is a way to anchor you down before you go off to Australia?
I think somewhat to that too. Okay. I mean, there was some of that because I certainly still had the itch to go travel.
Yeah.
Get
him quickly.
It was
get him married. Put him down.
It puts up. Anchor. And I actually had a moment that I remember very clearly with my mom too. I was struggling to kind of make a decision on an apartment at the time to live in Long Beach, and I still had this itch to travel and get away and keep on going. And I remember her, as far as the lifestyle in Europe and all that, it was very enticing to me.
Yes.
And maybe going there or going to live in Israel, it was really appealing to me. Yeah, and exciting. And I remember her I call it to this day, and I remember writing about it, kind of a verbal slap. My mom would verbally slap me of you can create the kind of life that you want to create right here, right? It's up to you to create the kind of life that you want to create. Yes. And I remember that really resonated with me. And that was kind of when I had made the turn of okay, I guess I do need to kind of anchor at some point, because I also didn't want to be a wanderer.
Yes.
Right? So that was okay, I need to anchor at some point. And that's how I decided and with my folks to, go to live in Long Beach, get an apartment, and give that whole thing a shot of starting to work for them.
Yes.
And that's how it happened.
So you're working with your dad's place in Long Beach. Now, your dad wasn't doing any pet food. Now, where did you get the idea that you want to do pet treats? Because that's kind of what's interesting. Where the heck does that idea come from?
So that comes years later.
Oh, okay.
Almost.
So
that comes years later. There was, that business eventually started to unwind, if you will, because of complicated partnership issues and things like that. That business that had been around for many years, it started to unwind.
Okay.
And it was
your dad's business, right?
My dad's business. It started to go through some trouble with the partnership. And that started to really wind down, which was a very difficult time for my family of kind of seeing that. It was really challenging for my dad because that was his everything, right? Talk about somebody that died, you know,
your soul is
in the business. That was him, right? So that was a real challenging time for him.
And obviously you're seeing this whole thing play out, right? Of partnerships and not going right, whatever's going on in the business. And this is obviously, oh man, like, look what's happening.
Yeah, look what's happening here. This is, you know, my dad's whole thing, but it really wasn't his. And my mom was really sick at the time. So it was just a real challenging time. And so we were selling in this business, we were selling all kinds of dog treats and dog toys and fish food and aquariums and, you know, you name it, for dogs and cats and things like that, everything but the food and the litter. So we had treats and things like that by other brands and other companies. Yes. And my dad, who seemed to know everybody within the industry, you know.
How long was he doing it for?
Oh, my dad at that point had probably been doing it for 20 years.
Okay, so he was well established.
Well established within the industry, and kind of everybody knew my dad, it seemed. So he had seen this opportunity within this new category of treats that were coming out that he was buying and selling through his business, right? So as that business was really starting to wind down, there was some opportunity that between my dad and my uncle had really kind of noticed, it was really my dad, that there's this opportunity within this category. Okay. And then I kind of swept in, if you will, asked to kind of help as this other business was kind of going down, and I was involved with it. I was kind of brought in to like, hey, can you help? You know, we're trying to get this thing going as well. Again, this was long before brand or anything came up. It was just like, hey, can you help out? You know, do you want to be involved in this as well as we're putting this whole thing together? And that's kind of how, those are the very initial bumblings of how we eventually, you know, got to where we are.
So you've got the product now coming off the ground. Now, are you testing this? Do you have your own pets? Like, are you?
I had a dog at the time. I had a dog.
Was it a picky dog or a dog that needs eats your fingers off?
You know, there are all kinds of them. He would eat almost everything. Chico was amazing, so he was a good dog tester. But yeah, it really kind of started with you know, my dad having known everybody and a lot of people within the industry, and it was like, okay, hey, we're gonna try this category, and my dad knew some brokers that knew some factories overseas. Wow. And then it was like, hey, we should go see these factories, take us around to all these different factories. And that was our first trip as we went to China.
Is that your first time to China?
That was my first time. So my uncle had been there many times, and my dad had been there, I believe, a couple of times already as well.
Did it satisfy the itch that you had as an adult or a younger guy trying to travel again?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. You know, I've always kind of enjoyed that part of travel and seeing and learning of the new cultures, and I've had the opportunity to travel extensively, you know, in sourcing and stuff like that. While it's different than traveling, you know, with your family and traveling for leisure, which I enjoy immensely, you know, traveling and going and seeing factories and things, while it's not the same, it's still it's an adventure. So and I guess I like that sense of that. So
your first time to China, how was that? How was that going there, seeing factories? What did you see? What did you learn?
Oh, it was fascinating. So this is going back to 2004 is probably when this was.
Firstly, what was your expectation going there? What were you expecting, or were you just kind of oblivious?
Yeah, I was kind of oblivious. Okay. I was oblivious. I was expecting, you know, very strict cultural, you know, nuances that we had to make sure that you know, followed and didn't want to in order to not offend. So I remember doing a bunch of research.
Bow with your card.
Yeah, I was with, you know, how to exchange business cards. So those kinds of things that I remember researching ahead of time. But then also kind of finding that it largely wasn't that. So almost finding that it was a lot more relaxed in some instances than I expected it to be. It was a phenomenal first experience, but yeah, to go to different factories and eventually deciding on the one that we wanted to work with, that we felt had the best quality, the best service, the best selection.
So were they trying to entice you to work with them? Were they actually trying to pick you? Say, hey, look at this stuff and we're better than everybody else? Was everybody trying to sell themselves to you?
Yeah, it was all about, showing their factory and these are the quality controls and this is why our factory is superior, because of the processes and the, services that we offer and, the capabilities that we have versus perhaps others. But it was very eye-opening to see the different levels of manufacturing, the different processes, how it's done. Yes. So I was always fascinated again by that idea of creating something out of nothing. Yeah. And so it was really amazing to see this raw material come in with a finished product going out. It's like, wow, that's really cool. So I really appreciated that.
So you're making your first purchase in China, you're doing your first thing, and obviously this is with your family, your uncle, you said.
Yeah, my uncle, my dad were there. Yeah.
So you're doing your first purchase, you're trusting them that everything's going to go, or you're worried about, I'm going to turn over money and I won't get my goods and I have to be here when they're loading it?
A little bit of both, right? A little bit of both, but I don't know if it's whatever luck or miracle or thing we had is that the quality we got was, we didn't have them, somebody, as you've heard the stories, or you open the container and it's air or it's a bunch of rocks or something like that. Yeah. So although you have those concerns, right? But I don't know. We never had hired an inspection company because we couldn't afford an inspection company. That's right. So we didn't. So it was a lot of it. Just it sounds like it would have been great if you could have afforded it, but I couldn't have afforded it. Yeah. So we just kind of went with it, and fortunately we picked a good one.
So you're getting your first container. How's your confidence level on your purchasing, and now you're bringing it to the US to sell it? Are you worried about people not buying it, giving it a funny reaction? Is that at all in your mind?
Oh, all of it. Yeah. You don't know, right? You have no idea what's going to happen. But between the time, I remember I saw the picture of our first order that we wrote while we were at the factory. It was like 20 cases of this and 25 cases of that, right? And our first 20-foot container that we ordered. And then we came home and it was like, oh, what are we going to call this stuff? What we need artwork, we need a brand. What are we going to do? So it went through that whole process of creating the packaging and all that.
Did your marketing skills that you actually learned a while back start going into play here?
I guess so. I suppose, but I think what I found also that's different is there's what you kind of learn in school and big corporate does, and then there's survival and getting stuff done.
That's right.
And just going and making it happen. So while I didn't have a complete business plan that was typed up and written up, I kind of knew what I needed to kind of check off the list.
And I think this is where the CEO skill comes in, right? Of planning a route and knowing where to go. What's plan A? What's plan B? What do I do when the fires are coming?
That's exactly right. I've kind of always felt that my ability is to see the full picture and to know what piece needs to come in, kind of like the orchestrator of an orchestra. That's right. They may not play the best drum, they may not play the best violin, but they know when that drum needs to go and that violin needs to hit. So that's kind of where I felt that my skill set kind of lies.
Okay, so you're getting your artwork all taken care of. You're excited that this product is obviously you're saying, yeah, this is going to work. This is it. This is something I feel it in my bones. It comes. So what do you do next? So does it fly off the shelves? There's a big step before that. That's kind of an emotional one in that sense that I mentioned that I started the business with my uncle, my dad, and myself, and going back to family businesses and being challenging. There was another challenge there in particular with my uncle that we had a riff for a while. So that really caused, again, just another part of the instances and the times that kind of affect your life and kind of how you view certain things. And that was a really impactful one for me. While things have kind of repaired themselves since then, it took a long time and sucked a lot out of it. It's interesting about the family conflict in business, because even though everybody loves each other, it really is, everyone has a different idea of how things work. When there's too many cooks spoil the broth. Yeah. And it really and it really does go, no, this is the way we no, this is my expectation of you, but this is your expectation of me, and people aren't doing what we expect of each other. Right. And I think that's where the partnerships struggle.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a big issue even before, our first container was on route, right?
Oh,
And then it, you know, culminated immediately after we got our first container. But that was a real shaping type of moment, as this little business that I have no idea what's going to happen.
Yep.
You have no clue, right? You know, the product's on the water.
Yep.
You know, you think you've done something right with the brand and the message and the colors and the things, but you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know. So now this container's en route. This whole thing with the family is boiling a little bit, and the first container arrives. Right. So here we are. We have a little tiny warehouse in Agoura Hills.
Yep.
In this tiny little office and warehouse, and the first container arrives, and I just packed my car and hit the road, and that was it. That was like, you know, we're fortunately from my dad's business, he had known a lot of we knew where a lot of independent pet shops were because they were shopping at my dad's, so we had some relationships.
Were the big brands out then, like Petco and all those big brands? Were they around?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so
sure. They were. That was always my goal. Was
Okay.
how do I get into a Petco or a PetSmart? Right. This is before Amazon or online was even a thing.
Yeah.
So this is December 2000 or June 2005 that you know, our first container arrived, and I would just pack up my car and just. You know, I knew the first store I was going to go to was going to be a store that I was going to get a win at, because I knew the guy, I knew Mike. He was going to, you know, he was going to buy something from me, right?
So it's good Mike who gets it done
yeah,
first.
you know, I wanted to start off you know, on a good note, right?
Yeah.
So I went to Mike. I had my car packed with you know, cases of our dog treats.
Yeah.
We picked out 8. So I think we started off with 8 products. That we were just sitting at the factory and we're like, we'll take this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then that's what we, you know, created some artwork, sent it to them, sent them some money, and you receive a container.
So did Mike buy?
Yeah, so Mike bought. Yeah, so Mike bought. It was $176.20, I believe, was our first
giving
sale.
high fives and saying, "Wow, we did it! First one's gone."
It was awesome. Yeah, so I went back to my car, got the product, you know, took it back to him, got a check, and drove off to the next store.
Right.
And I, at the time, again, this is pre-internet, I had Microsoft Streets and Trips.
Okay.
Which to me was the most amazing application. It was a software that you buy. You got a disk and you upload it, right?
It gives you addresses.
And I had I had a bunch of addresses, of pet stores.
Yeah.
So I'd create a route every day. I'd have a route of pet shops that I would go to and visit. So I had a Calabasas route, and I had a city route and a Wilshire. I had all these different routes that I'd go to these different stores and walk in with my box of treats.
So when you're walking in there, you're just saying, "Hi, I'm from Pet and Ship, and I want to sell. Do you guys want to buy some snacks? How's your sales pitch? How do you figure out your sales pitch? Because that's a hard thing by itself."
Yeah, I mean, it was really, I just walk in with my box of samples and my box of treats. "Hi, my name is Ahdee. I have a brand of dog treats. Would you be interested in looking at it and perhaps buying it?" It was just like that. I wish I could say I went in and crafted something, but it was really just walking in. Now, I think it's different walking into a pet shop, right? An independent mom and pop pet shop, right? You couldn't do that walking into Petco.
Yes.
Right?
Oh no, of course.
Right. And so it depends on the type of business atmosphere, right? You can't do that going into a vet shop and sell, right?
Did you like that part of the business though? The part of walking in, because obviously it's an adrenaline rush. Like some people who do sales like walking in to feel like the rush, and going for the chase or chasing the bone is better than actually achieving the bone.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'd say no, but at the time I didn't think about it or have a choice.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, if you asked me to do that today, I'd be like, oh my God,
Please.
that'd be terrifying, it'd be horrible. Right. But at the time it's necessity, right? You have this 20-foot container, which is a ton of product that has an expiration date that you've spent a lot of money on. That fortunately, my uncle and my dad kind of had that seed money for that first container to get it here.
And were they doing sales too, or it was just?
No, that was just me. Was just me
on by yourself. Okay.
Yeah, I'm out there just on my own, just going store to store.
And it's interesting that you said that it had an expiration date, so now you really have a clock.
Yeah, you got to get this stuff sold. It has 18 months of shelf life.
Wow.
Already a couple months it was on the water.
Yes.
All right, you got to get this stuff sold. So it was just every day I'd pack my car up and travel my route and walk in with my box of treats and got a lot of rejections and got enough people to say yes to then, what eventually happens, and you kind of start to see that there's a pulse, right? That you start to sense a little pulse in the business, right? Because at first you have no idea, is this still going to sell?
That's right.
So your first validation, right, is like, oh, Mike bought. It's like, okay, so I it's good enough to get like 10 stores or whatever it is, right? And then then you go back to Mike's, just to use him for an example. And you go back the next time and you're like, oh, wow, I sold you 36 pieces the first time and you need to reorder like another 18. Oh, that's a good.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, that's a sign.
Yeah.
And then you go in the second time or the third time now and you got to reorder again. And then you go a fourth time and you got to reorder again. Now you're like, okay, there's a pattern here, right?
Yes.
That means that somebody is coming in, they're buying it, and then coming in and maybe buying it again, right?
Yes.
And that's the key to any kind of consumer product.
Yeah.
So, once I kind of got a feel for that, I remember calling my dad, we need to get another container. we got to get another container. We got to get it fast, and that's when you start to,
Then you start planning, right, of getting product down fast enough because now you're trying to get it here before it sells out, keep the momentum going, don't want to lose the momentum.
The problem that we still have today.
That's exactly right.
Just on a bigger scale. But so it was kind of, it started like that. But for the first 3 to 6 months, I want to say, it was just me in the car and driving Southern California, Arizona, and Nevada, and California, Arizona, and Nevada.
You were actually driving out of state and doing this too?
Oh yeah, I was just driving. Yeah, I'd pack my car and drive and do a trip to Arizona.
What were you driving back then?
What did I have? I think I had a Honda Civic.
It was a Honda
Civic. Yeah, I don't have any pictures of it.
I was gonna say you had about 350,000 miles on it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I don't remember
Tires
how many
every
it had at the time, but yeah, it had good miles on it. But yeah, that was just the car that I would pack up, and I was able to fit like treats everywhere.
Wow.
And go store to store. I'd stay at friends' houses and stay on their couches and then wake up in San Jose and then do some stores in San Jose. And then,
it's interesting about how you traveled, going from from when you were traveling around Europe and staying in the hostels to actually being in your car and going place to place and kind of doing it as a business version in the USA. What your mom said was actually trying to make it happen in front of you, and you're kind of doing it without realizing it.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah, that I never really thought of. But going back to your question earlier, I think it's, I don't know if I hadn't done the trip to traveling on my own, would I have had the courage and the strength? Those are questions that you can go ask endlessly, but. I think, again, it's all part of the character that it builds. But it was just being scrappy, right? It's just being scrappy and doing what you got to do to sell a container, right? You have this product. What are you going to do?
So when do you realize that this thing is starting to take off? Like, when do you realize that it's starting to expand, or like, okay, time to get my first employee? Or when do you realize this? What's the aha moment? Like, oh man, I need someone.
Yeah, so we had at the time, I should say, I was married at the time.
Oh, so you did, okay.
Yeah, I had gotten married just before the business kind of started, and my ex-wife was instrumental in laying the foundations of the business and starting it up and all that. She was fantastic from an administrative, accounting, and a bunch of stuff. She was phenomenal. You start to you start to see the sales a little bit, and you're going back to these stores again and again, and you're getting some traction, and you see the sales kind of tick up a little bit at a time, or at least they're not going down, but they're kind of either sustaining or going.
Are you taking a salary here? Are you taking some wages, or are you just kind of like taking nothing for the first 6 months, just kind of living it very penny to penny?
It's penny to penny. It's saving. It's making sure you have the inventory and receivables. It's doing the whole thing, right? And at the time, our terms with our vendors was, probably 30-40% up front, and so it was a lot of cash, and by that time, my uncle was out of the business because of everything that we had, and at that point, it became kind of my business entirely.
Yes.
During that very first container, and fortunately, I had an apartment that I had at the time, and then we started using my home equity line of credit to finance containers. And we probably used my home equity line of credit for 10 to 12 years to finance the business.
This actually now makes it more serious now when your life is now tied up to the business. And
Absolutely.
if something goes wrong, you go down with the ship.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. So that was always a big, big thing. And like I said, as the business grew, so did that home equity line of credit.
Wow.
And the amount of loans that I had on that line of credit, because it was the only thing that I had.
Yes.
You know, big banks wouldn't look at us.
No.
They wouldn't give us the kind of loans that we needed. So there was not, what do you do, right?
It's funny how banks only lend when you have the money that you don't need.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
kind of the weirdest thing, but that's how it is.
Yeah, and later on, it became a lot easier, right?
Yeah.
So it's a 100%. But that really became the funding for the business was the home equity line of credit.
Wow.
So yeah.
So as it expands now, so obviously you get your facility and you're starting to pack, and I know you had all that equipment, packing stuff up and doing bits and pieces. Like, when does that start coming? When you start doing all that or growing with people working for you?
Yeah, so it kind of changes. One thing that was really important over the years was we stayed agile, right? We stayed really, and we had to change and shift and try new things. And I think that is a key for a small startup is you kind of really be quick and agile. So, early on we had some problems with the perception of brands coming from overseas was taking a bit of a hit, and that kind of started to culminate in around 2013, 14, when we realized, we really need to do something here and really shift. And at that point I had maybe an admin person, maybe two, and I always knew I wanted to get off the road. I didn't want to be our main salesperson.
Yes. The coach can't be the player.
That's a great saying. Yeah. So I never wanted to do that full time. Yeah. So at this point it was like, okay, the business has some traction. It looks like there's some growth, and we started looking into hiring a salesperson, while at the same time this perception thing with overseas products is happening. So we were able to hire on a sales guy after cycling through a few. We didn't get it right the first few times. We finally found one that
the first salesman was probably selling you.
Yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
probably the first four.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and I was timid and didn't know and all those kind of things. Eventually we found one, and at that time it was like we had to kind of just try something new. That's right. And that's when we were, and every year from their very first year, every year we came out with new products. We were constantly trying something new and discontinuing. So like we had major flops that didn't work, right? There's a lot of them in our past that didn't work out. But every year we had to come up with 2 to 4 products at minimum, just to have something new to talk about at a trade show, and just to keep the momentum of something, to have something new to talk about at the store level.
So you're now putting a lot of creativity into trying to bring up new ideas, right? And that's really, so do you enjoy this portion of the business? Because most people starting like that portion of the business. Yeah,
it goes back to creating something out of nothing, right? Yeah. There's no package, there's no product, there's nothing here. And then, through this process, there's like this package that you can now go out and sell for $2, $3, $4 or whatever it is. So I enjoy that part. As challenging as it is, I enjoy that process of creating something out of nothing. It was always coming something to have in the pipeline, right? Yes. So at that point we made a big shift to really go into made in USA, because we needed to change that. And that's when we found manufacturing here. And started getting into chicken feet was a big thing for us.
Chicken feet.
So this was a great story. So we went up to this manufacturer here in Sacramento, I want to say, Fresno. And then they made dog treats, different types of bones and things like that. And I went up there with my dad and our salesperson at the time. And we go up there and we're looking at all these products, and there are chicken feet. And I go, chicken feet? And my sales guy, he goes, chicken? Oh, we got to do those. And I go, chicken feet? You are out of your mind. Like, who is going to buy a chicken foot? Like, that's no one's going to buy chicken feet, right? And he's like, well, a person in Tennessee, he was from the South. Well, a person in Nashville will, and a woman in Florida will, and a person here will. I was like, all right, well, we'll give it a shot. Chicken feet.
Okay.
And soon enough, chicken feet became our thing. It's like that was really our way, our foot in the door, if you will, of getting into that category of products was that chicken feet, which eventually led us onto this whole thing of almost getting into manufacturing and buying ovens and down this whole other path that eventually we abandoned.
Wow.
But yeah, it was again, the idea of constantly trying something new, something that's different.
Just keep moving.
And keep on moving.
That's right. And I think that's an important part. If people stay stagnant, it gets very, I think not only for like consumers, but I think it's for the people get a little flat.
Yeah.
So I think we have to excite ourselves while we're trying to be entrepreneurs or we're trying to be creative beings.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the buyers that you're going to see, that's what they're looking for is what's new. Because consumers are going into their stores and saying, what's new, right? So that you have to kind of have this constant flow, right? At the same time, you have to get rid of stuff that's not working, while you have your staples that are always selling.
So the business expands, you're growing with this. Now, when you get to the next level, like what I would assume would happen is now all the financials and doing stuff the right way and balance sheets. And this also is life draining too, because I go through this myself.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah. It's very difficult. Very difficult. Yeah.
So how does that play a part? So do you start hiring accountants and getting people in place and trying to figure things out? And then you say, oh, does it take the life out of you? We're saying, oh, well, this is what I want to, this is not the part of the business I enjoy, because that's the part I don't enjoy either.
Absolutely. That was never the part that I enjoyed in the administrative aspects of it and the operational aspects of it. But, when you're starting off, you don't have the choice. Yes. So, yeah, it was probably around 2013, 14, 12, 13, 14, somewhere around there where we started, hiring. By that point, my ex-wife we were divorced and had a new relationship with my current wife. And we had enough of to be able to hire, an inventory person and an accounting type of administrative kind of Jack or Jackie of all trades that can do a little bit of everything, customer service, order entry, and things like that. Yep. So, it took us a while until we got the right people. But
it's just Band-Aids on different things, right?
Exactly. But it was really important to hire really good people, and that we're able to get a lot of stuff done. That was always my key, that we're agile as well. So I was able to, over the years, hire some really fantastic and very talented people that were able to kind of help scale the business. So I wasn't doing all the PO creation and doing everything as I did for a long time. But it took a long time to get there. It wasn't probably 7 to 8, 9 years until we got to that point that we could afford that.
So does business ownership change in your mind then, like with going through all this stuff? Like what you thought it was, what it was turning into, and then the stuff that off balancing stuff. And does that change where your mindset was in the business?
100%. Yeah. I think you go through an evolution as of owning the business as the business evolves. Yeah. And as we've spoken about, Vistage kind of popped into my life in 2014, I'd say, was the first time that I was introduced to it. I think it was around 2013 that somebody had mentioned it to me within the industry. And I remember at the time I was like, oh, there's no way I could afford that, but that sounds amazing. Yes. And it wasn't until 2014 and then in 15 that it was like I kind of was reintroduced to it. Yeah. And at that time I decided to join Vistage. And that was a real groundbreaking and turning point for me, in that one, at that point I realized, wow, this could be a business and doesn't have to be, I don't know what to say. Like, it doesn't have to be my life. I can build this business to fit the kind of lifestyle that I want to be able to build, right? And by getting in good employees, by setting up good processes, by setting up good systems. I'm not going to be the one doing payroll all day, right? I'm not going to be the one doing this. So
it gives you life back, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And Vistage is a group of CEOs who have grown it from different levels of companies. So you've got the guys who are starting out, you've got guys in the middle, you've got the $1 billion guys in there. It's an array of different companies giving ideas of how they did it.
That's exactly right.
And how they travel and be happy happy while having a business rather than feeling it's murdering you.
Yeah. But also realizing, and this was the biggest insightful thing for me, is realizing that you're not alone.
Yes.
Right. Is realizing, wow, all these really successful businesses, business owners that have these tremendous businesses are struggling with the same things that I am,
Yes.
or even learning that a Fortune 50 CEO of like the biggest industries of our nation, of this world,
Yes.
are having the same types of feelings of insecurities and
Yes.
things that I have.
Yes.
That was really eye-opening for me,
Yes.
and kind of made me look at the business from a different lens at
Yes.
the time.
I agree. Okay, so at some point with congratulations that you end up finding a way to exit the business, and an acquisition happens. And this I thought was very fascinating because a lot of people who start a business struggle to get off the train.
Yeah.
Like people that I know literally want to die at their desk.
Yeah.
That's just the way they see it. I'm the business. I can't get off the train. How do you decide that this is the right move for you, or how do you let go?
It starts at the very beginning. I always knew at some point I was going to sell this business, whether it was back in the 2005-06, that at some point this was going to be a business to sell. There's going to be more to this. It wasn't going to be that. Yeah. So that was a process, but at the time it was a lot more of a pipe dream than anything else. And I was really kind of goes back to I kind of grew up reading about this and stories of Nike and Ben and Jerry, those guys. Those always inspired me of like, wow, that can happen, right? So that was always my vision for at some point. But again, it was more of a pipe dream for most of the years.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until kind of 2014, 15 that there was like really traction starting to hit. We were really starting to see an increase in our trajectory of sales. Online was really starting to come on. Amazon, Chewy, and other online retailers were really starting to take online to a whole level. We were fairly well positioned at that point. So we started to see our sales trajectory really starting to pick up in 2014, 15, and 16. It was like, wow, there's really something here.
Yeah.
Holy cow. And that was when I first started kind of like, wow, this might not be just about a pipe dream. This might actually happen, right? Yeah. So I had started to just educate myself of what does that process look like? What kind of team do I need to have? Do you need lawyers? What kind? Yeah. What does this look like? What is the number that you need to be at? What sales numbers do you need to be at?
Because most people have no clue, even the business guys have no idea of what is entailed in that process.
Right.
As much as we think we know, we have no clue, and the giants are just looking at us of saying, okay, well, I know what this is, but you have no clue what's going on.
That's right. Yeah. You need to make sure that you're going into this surrounded by people that can help you. Right. And that's what I've always felt is really important, and has been kind of part of how I've been able to achieve things is having mentors, knowing when to ask for help, who to ask for help for. I've had amazing mentors throughout my life, and it's really important to have that. Yes. So it's kind of in the same thing. You're entering into this new process, whatever it is. You better make sure that there are people around you that can give you advice, knowledgeable advice.
How to do it right.
To cut your learning curve substantially. So I had started to very initially just talk to lawyers, anybody who would spend time with me, of just like, how do you sell a business? What's the number that you need to be at to make it so it makes sense? Yeah. What the number would I need to make it for it to make sense? It's all that. So that was started 15, 16, 17, somewhere around there.
Where does your ego come in though? Like where you say like, oh, no, but this is my company. And at the end you're saying, oh, well, money's great, but who am I then? Because the business is you.
Yeah,
that's play a part with you.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that's a real challenging part, particularly afterwards now. But I didn't want that fear of not knowing to be necessarily the thing that holds me back from trying something new or I feel that there's still a lot more that I can do. I'm still young and there's plenty of opportunity for me to do other things. And while that business was great and I loved it and it provided and it was fantastic, there's still a lot more things to do and try and
you get to travel.
Yeah, I get to do that and so I don't know. I was able to separate the two, quite well, from the sense of like, that doesn't have to be part of me. That doesn't take away the challenge of now that you're not doing that to the same extent, then, that's different.
So the feeling now that you've sold the business, the feeling afterwards, obviously you're still in the business, but on a different level. And I presume you're doing more of a creative level now.
It's a different role entirely, but yeah.
So how do you, how does it feel now? Like, was it a weight lifted off your shoulders? Did you say, wow, I should have done this a long time ago? What's your feeling?
Oh, tremendous weight off the shoulders, right? I mean,
welcome back to Earth.
Yeah, there's a certain part of that of like, right, you don't realize when the business was doing quite well at the time, and there's a lot of moving parts, and we were 5-6 of us as the business at the time, and there's a lot of cash that is outstanding, and there's a lot of families that are relying on you for their livelihoods, and then your house and line of credit is maxed out, and all those things, they're really heavy. They're really heavy.
Nail biter.
And then the constant problem solving, right, which is exciting and enticing on one hand, when you have all that line of credit and all those things, while also, it's just survival, right? Yes. You're constantly scrapping and constantly surviving and constantly maneuvering and constantly, right? So at that point, I've been doing it for kind of, 15, 16 years of kind of slugging it out and grinding and growing, and it's all fantastic. But I also recognize that for the business and for the brand, more importantly than the business, for the brand to get to the next level, I needed to get out of the way. Yes. I kind of recognized that. I needed to get out of the way, because otherwise I wasn't going to be able to give it the life, because of the fear, the baggage, the stuff that I brought into it with maxing out lines of credit and managing cash flow and inventory and all that. I needed for it to get to that next level, I needed to get out the way for it to achieve that. So it was kind of recognizing all those things.
It's interesting that you do recognize it, because a lot of people don't recognize it. And if anything, it's, I normally say the CEO can be the person who actually crashes the company.
Yeah.
Just by being selfish, or being the guy that I know everything and no one knows anything.
Yeah.
It's a very scary point that gets to some people that they just don't recognize. And I think that's great that you recognize. Very humbling thing, I think, that you recognize that.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know. To me, it was so obvious. It's like, if I stay here, not because I think I know it all, but because I'm scared, right? There's certain fears and baggage and my risk tolerance more than anything, right? It's like what makes some of these amazing CEOs, of the biggest companies out there, entrepreneurs, Elon Musk is probably the best. His tolerance for risk is just unbelievable, right? Yes. So I don't have that kind of same risk tolerance that he does. So it just kind of came to that point. There was only so much I was going to be able to get the brand, and to get it to that next level, I would have been, scary.
So with what you've done now, what would you do next? Like, what would you want to do next after this? Like, what's your plan? Is it something simple? Is it bakery? Like, what would you like to do next?
It's funny you say bakery. Maybe something like that. It would. I don't know.
Baker?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe it would be a baker. I don't know. I don't. The short answer is I don't 100% know. There's kind of areas that I want to pursue. Yeah. I want to build things, and whether that's a business or just stuff around the house or fixing things, but building, again, going back to that creation idea, creating something out of nothing. I want to teach. So in some way, if I could inspire others that were, that kind of, again, I had such great mentors. I had such great teachers. I had such great people that helped me along the way, that if I can, be a tenth of what any of those provided to me, then to somebody, to inspire them, to move forward, that would be something. I want to help. So, whether I could volunteer or help in some form of capacity.
Yes.
I want to learn, and so whether that's taking classes or, just kind of being a lifelong learner, whether it's learning another language or, you know, a new business skill or better finance skills or something like that. And I want to teach, and I want to play.
Yeah.
I want to play, you know, so whether that's being active and cycling. So it's I don't know if it's any one of those. It's not one of those things. It's a mixture of all of those things. Yeah. I will say that you know, I loved owning you know, as much as business in the time of it was really hard and it's challenging, and there were plenty of times that I wanted to, you know, get out of it. I wanted to quit a gazillion times I've wanted to quit. Now having done it, you know, there's certain parts that I miss of like that, you know, that scrappiness and that struggle and that
you want to be beaten up a few times.
Yeah, you kind of need that hustle of like going out and figuring it out. And so I don't know to what extent that you know, manifests, but I've thought about like a bakery, a coffee shop, something small and local where I can, you know, do that. So I don't know exactly, but I'm excited to kind of be open to seeing kind of what happens. I'm not sure. While at the same time being part of this company and seeing where it goes, because there's a lot of really good things happening there too.
Fantastic. Ahdee, I want to thank you very much for coming in, sharing valuable information. I appreciate you making the effort to come down here.
Thank you. This has been great. Thank you. This has always been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you, Ahdee.
Thank you.